Hello everyone, and welcome to Insights. Today I want to focus on faith and a couple kinds of faith and crisis. So let's take a look at this actually from both Mark chapter 4 at the end of that chapter as well as in Luke chapter 8 where Jesus calms the storm. Now before we get into the crisis, the storm, and all of that, let's just stop for a moment and talk about the disciples. They are in the boat. They had been following Jesus for some time. They are being faithful. They're with him. They're close to him. They're in the process of getting from one side of the lake to the other side of the lake because this is what Jesus wants, and they're being faithful to him. And yet, when that storm comes up, and Jesus seems undisturbed by the whole thing as he sleeps, the disciples are panicking. So what does this reveal? It reveals it's one thing to be faithful. It's another thing to be full of faith. So this storm reveals that while the disciples were being faithful, they were not full of faith. In fact, at the end of this story, Jesus looks at his disciples and he says, "Where is your faith?" He expected the disciples to respond in faith. He expected them not to be panicking, although they were panicking. Are we full of faith? Well, that comes, will we respond not only in faithfulness, but being full of faith? God is going to need people like you and me to be able to help others so that we're not panicking like the disciples did. So in terms of becoming full of faith, there's many things that have helped me, and let me just touch on a few. The first one is faith comes by hearing, and hearing the Word of God. So for example, instead of just reading so much of the Bible every day, I want to let the very Word of God get into my soul, my heart, and so I will respond in faith. For example, Elijah in 1 Kings, he calls down fire from heaven, and he is undaunted by the hundreds of prophets of Baal and Asherah, and he sees God move in power. It's not just reading that story that's helpful, it's an actual factual account which needs to get in my heart so that I believe in the living God. And of course, we can look at many of the examples that Jesus provides for us, as well as what we just looked at in terms of calming the storm. Is it just that we know it, or do we have it in us in such a way that we're responding in faith? Second, I also see what God has done in my life, whether it's coming to faith initially or it's other times where I've ministered to people and they've come to faith. In other words, seeing God move in these ways, it builds my faith, as well as praying for people. Sometimes there's some sort of sickness, physical malady, praying for them, seeing God heal them. It boosts my faith. Sometimes people are ensnared with the enemy. Even believers at times have just gotten beaten down by the enemy and seen the enemy flee. That boosts my faith. And I can't forget these things because in the moment of crisis, and again, in our nation, I believe there is great difficulty ahead. It's imperative that all of us are not only faithful now, but we're full of faith. So in that moment, when things are revealed, we see our true hearts. So again, let's think back to Jesus and the disciples in the boat crossing the Sea of Galilee. They're close to him. They're with him. They're doing his will. They're following him. But Jesus expected them to respond in faith, even being full of faith. Are you full of faith? This is the day and hour to become full of faith. I look forward to being with you again next week on Insights.